104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. Our buddy Doug Sherman was on the call for Siena in the big old comeback versus Monmouth. Doug, let me just tell you, I hear everybody talking about home court advantage, and it's driving me nuts because I was listening to you, and you were painting this amazing picture of just pretty much disparity. And every time you said that it looks like Siena just doesn't have anything to play for, they cut to Patsos. He's on the bench. He looks like he's planning, where he's going to go to dinner tonight. And then all of a sudden, Siena comes all the way back. How much do you feel home court advantage actually played a factor in this game?
Oh, it played a big factor, but not as big a factor as Nico Claris playing out of his mind, or I should say shooting out of his mind. It's not like he was playing a well-rounded game. He was hobbled. He was just a hired gun coming off the bench and was in the zone. And certainly he and his teammates fed off of the crowd. There's no question about that. Siena absolutely gained an advantage there. But they were dead in the water. Their body language was awful those first couple of minutes of the second half. And if Nico hadn't come in and done what he did, we would be talking about, well, Siena's season is over, and what about next year?
Doug, yeah, I think that's where I was, and why I don't necessarily believe in home court. I mean, they're down 17. Like, I feel like when you spot a team a 17-point lead, that's the great equalizer with home court advantage.
Yeah, and Jimmy Patsos, to his credit, was the one guy in the league back when he was at Loyola for those 9 years who readily said the tournament should be in Albany. I mean, it's the only market that they have tried that cares about MAC basketball. And if you look at the other 10-member schools, the best, other than Siena, in terms of attendance, is usually 1/3 of Siena's attendance, if that makes sense. So Albany and the Capital Region are the only places, or the only place that cares to this degree where you can feel like you've got a great atmosphere. And obviously, one team is going to benefit from that, but Jimmy was on the other side of one of these games where when he was at Loyola, MAC semifinal game, they had a 17-point lead over Siena in Albany and blew that 17-point lead. So Jimmy cost himself potentially by going up to Albany and playing against Siena in front of the big home crowd. And he came out of that saying, hey, that's basketball. That's the way it goes, and I would rather play in front of 8,000 people screaming against me than to play in an arena with nobody there.
Doug Sherman, you had the call for Siena Monmouth last night on ESPN3, joining us right now on 104.5 The Team.
Doug, you've had a chance to cover a lot of local sports here in the Capital Region. Where does Nico Claris' performance rank in these all-time great Capital Region basketball moments?
That's a good question. It certainly has its place within Siena lore. Pete Rizzo at the Times-Union, I thought, wrote a terrific column this morning and talking about the fact that it will forever be a signature Siena moment, and if Nico never scores another basket in green and gold, he will forever have his place. That's a good question. In terms of singular moments, obviously anytime you win the championship and guys who have had great performances for that are at the top of the list. The things that Ronald Moore did in the NCAA tournament win are huge moments. I don't think it quite gets to that level, only because it was a MAC semifinal. Doremus Bennerman's 50-point performance in the NIT third-place game down at Madison Square Garden against Kansas State, to me, is a singular holy cow game where he just was the best player on the floor. I'm not trying to downplay what Nico did. I think in the moment it's, holy cow, we've never seen this before. But I think 10 years, 20 years from now, we'll still remember it. They'll still talk about it. But I don't think it's going to be the number one Siena moment of all time.
So you're hinting at this a bit. Hopefully this doesn't make it a bit more complicated for you. But does Nico's performance need a Siena MAC championship win to make that performance even more remarkable?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it is what it is. He did what he did. And I think the chances are just as likely tonight that he goes out and his ankle is not allowing for him to do what he does, and Iona defends him better than Monmouth did, and he's a non-factor. And whether they win or lose, to me, that doesn't diminish at all the magical 40 minutes that we had, whatever it was, however long it took from the point where he got into the game early in the second half to the end. It was a magical time to be in that building, and for Siena fans, it'll never be diminished if they don't win tonight and go on to the NCAA tournament. It was remarkable to see. It really was.
Doug Sherman with us. Now, Doug, I'm sorry to harp on this, but I can't let it go. I hate the home court advantage argument because the refs were making terrible calls against Siena.
Well, to me, those are two separate issues altogether. Whether the officials made good calls, bad calls for the home team, for the visiting team, you can't lessen the idea that the reality is if you've got, I don't even know what the attendance number wound up being last night.
About 5,400.
5,400, and so 5,000 of those people were cheering for Siena. You saw the way Nico, especially, and his teammates were feeding off the crowd, regardless of what the rest were doing or what I was doing or you guys were doing. Those 18 to 22-year-old kids were clearly feeding off the energy in the building that if they were playing in Springfield or Buffalo or Bridgeport or Trenton, they wouldn't have had, and maybe it doesn't help urge them over the top. So they absolutely benefit from it, but, this is the real world. This is, big boy college basketball, at least for this area, and it's the reality of the MAC that you can't go to a neutral market or you can't go to a lot of markets and have this sort of passion, and unfortunately for some, you're going to be on the wrong side of that sometimes, and it might hurt you. But that's the reality of the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference.
All right, I'll accept it, but only because you said it.
Doug, let's get into
that. Now, as soon as we get off the air, you'll be killing me.
I'm like, God damn, Sherman!
Before that happens, we'll go to tonight's matchup. Iona taking on Siena. What can we expect in this rematch between these two teams?
Well, there are enough guys on both sides who seem to be up and down that it's hard to predict. I mean, Levon Long, you don't know what you're going to get. He could be the best player on the floor doing everything that he's good at, or he could play 24 minutes and do nothing. No points, no rebounds, no assists, or he could get a triple-double. Iona's got a couple of graduate transfers in the backcourt, Sam Cassell Jr., who came from UConn, and John Sevier, who transferred in from Fordham. They are tremendous talents, but they, too, have been inconsistent. Their star point guard, Iona's star point guard, Ricky McGill, I think he had 25 points in the quarterfinal and basically did nothing last night in the semifinal. So, these are college kids. Jordan Washington, the best big in the league for Iona, he could foul out in 5 minutes, or he could go for 30 and 15. So the long and short of it, as far as I'm concerned, is it's a coin flip. I think it'll be a competitive game. I think it'll be entertaining because unlike if St. Peter's was in, they'd be trying to slow it down and grind it. Both Iona and Siena are happy to get up and down, and if they're making shots, it'll be a fun game regardless of who wins it. I would have to say probably Siena would be favored. I don't know what the betting line is. Maybe you guys have seen that. But I would think, these two teams tied in the regular season, and if for nothing else, the home court advantage would give Siena a slight edge.
Doug Sherman, for years and years, he was just ours at CBS 6. Now we share him with the entire ESPN audience. Doug, what's next for you?
Well, women's championship on ESPNU today for the MAC, and then men's NIT. I will get at least a game or two coming up week after next. So that's what I know right now.
Doug, we appreciate your time, man. It's always good talking to you. I'm a little shocked you didn't take any shots at Goz for his hometown, but
we almost made it the whole interview.
There's always next time.
I didn't realize we were done. I thought we still had a few minutes. You didn't give me an opportunity.
You know what? I'll take it away.
No. We can end it right now. Doug Sherman's the best. Thank you very much.
Doug,
all right, guys.
You had a great call last night, man. It was like you painted the picture of the arena perfectly.
I appreciate that very much.